Reshaping a Greater New Orleans Criminal Justice is made possible by Baptist Community Ministries. Founded in 1924 as Southern Baptist Hospital, Baptist Community Ministries is committed to the development of a healthy community, offering a wholesome quality of life to its residents and to improving the physical, mental, and spiritual health of the individuals they serve. Baptist Community Ministries is a nonprofit private foundation registered in the state of Louisiana and is committed to the Greater New Orleans region. For more information, visit www.bcm.org.
When it comes to polling, when it comes to media, do you really want to devote those kind of resources to maybe having a shot at knocking off an incumbent judge? So I think that's why we're seeing so many judges being re-elected without opposition, is that challengers are not willing to bear the cost to take that seat.
In fact, between qualifying and the end of September, what would have been 4 races at Orleans Criminal District Court shrunk to just 2 when the challengers dropped out. So now at Tulane and Broad, voters have the chance to choose who fills a pair of the 13 seats on the elected bench.
Here's the one chance that we get over the next 6 years to potentially upgrade the judiciary.
How do voters decide to pick a judge?
We know you're going to put violent people away in jail. Everybody going to do that. That's the easy thing. But tell me the other things that you're going to do that will have a positive impact both on individuals and both on this city.
There's no more important role to have regarding the criminal justice system in the future of this city regarding crime than the people that sit on your bench.
WYES continues our ongoing series, Reshaping a Greater New Orleans Criminal Justice, with this latest edition, Elections 2014. Hello, everyone. I'm Marcia Cavanaugh, Community Projects producer here at WYES. Thanks so much for joining us. In this half hour, our goal is to help voters in New Orleans think about factors to consider as they make decisions in the races for Orleans Parish Criminal District Court judge. There are many other very important offices and issues on the ballot, but we focus on the elections in Criminal District Court because of our ongoing commitment to examining criminal justice reform in our city since Hurricane Katrina. We begin with what we found when we took our cameras out to ask voters what they think about before they elect a judge.
How long am I Caesar salad fried chicken? Here we go. 723.
We went to Cafe Reconcile, a place where people in the political know are said to go to gauge opinion about the November 4th elections for Orleans Criminal District Court judge. So what do voters want to know?
Probably their background in terms of honesty and those kind of things. What we see and read, basically, yeah. The average voter probably know a little something about the judicial race. Most of the voters that I know realize that the judicial system that our kids come through is very important.
I would think that we need to look for a judge that's going to be fair, that's not going to be discriminative, and that's going to administer the law. Make sure that the people that come before them is being treated fairly and that the right judgment is made.
To me, 2 things come to mind. The first one, I think they should see where the candidates are getting their money from to ensure that they're not completely sold to one side or the other. Ensure that there's someone who's going to enter the bench and be very fair and impartial. I would also want to see their positions on looking at alternatives to incarceration and seeing if they're interested in alternative forms of sentencing and things that are actually going to rehabilitate people when dealing with criminal court cases.
We have to know what their background is, because how can you back somebody or support somebody if you really don't know who they are? You know, and a lot of it's not just what you see in commercials. Go to the town meetings where they're going to be at, because I guarantee you they're speaking somewhere. The way we find out is that we go to these meetings and we ask the questions, because if we don't ask the questions, how do we know where they stand? Granted, they can say anything, but see if what they say match with the way they've been living.
Chef Joe suggests that we question how judges live. But in reality, unless we spend time at Tulane and Broad, we don't know how criminal court judges work. We talked with respected retired criminal court judges and with experts who watch the courts to try to help voters know what criminal district court judges do. At Tulane and Broad, the judges of Criminal District Court preside over state criminal cases involving adult defendants. There are 13 elected criminal court judges. 12 run their own courtrooms in sections A through L. There's also a magistrate judge whose duties include holding preliminary hearings, making pretrial release or detention decisions, setting bonds, and signing search and arrest warrants with help from 4 commissioners appointed by the 13 elected judges. The salary of a district court judge is set by state statute. The Louisiana Supreme Court recommends pay scales through its Judicial Compensation Commission. In July 2014, the annual pay rose to $146,261.60. That figure does not include health and life and disability insurance benefits and the state's contribution to judges' retirement. The judges are elected to 6-year terms. We questioned 2 retired criminal court judges about the responsibilities of the bench.
Well, any district court judge, the main role is to preside over the trial. But the trial is much more than what I think the average citizen realizes. It begins with initial appearances, making sure the proper bail or bond has been set in that matter, and then making sure before the trial that there is a level playing field, both for the prosecution and the defense. And that would involve the hearing of motions, making sure discovery or the evidence that would be needed by both sides in the trial is presented in a forthright fashion, in a prompt manner. Then the matter would be set for trial, and at that time, I think that's the image that most people have of criminal court judges, which is presiding over the actual proceeding. Being a judge at criminal district court is the medical equivalency of being at an emergency room. You have a docket and you have your own agenda in terms of how you want to proceed with that docket, but things come in and interrupt. Most of the dockets at criminal district court start at 9 o'clock, but even before that and even before and after 9 o'clock, judges are meeting with attorneys to see what they can do to move the docket on that particular day in an efficient manner. And I think that's one of the things folks don't understand. They may be sitting in a courtroom and they say, well, court's supposed to start at 9. But if you're meeting with attorneys trying to resolve some preliminary matters, sometimes you might not get on the bench till 9:15 or 9:30. But in the years that I have been associated with the criminal justice system, which is well over 30 years now, as my time as an attorney, as a judge, I've known very few judges that were not well-informed and prepared to start their docket at the time assigned. And sometimes there are things that come up early in the morning that would affect the overall day that have to be handled before they can actually take the bench.
You make decisions every day that impact both people who are in your court, but the greater society outside of it. You're making a decision. Your decision may have adverse consequences to a person who's standing in front of you, but it can also have adverse societal consequences, which is why public safety is always an aspect. It should always be a part of the thought process of a judge who makes decisions in a criminal setting. Public safety becomes a thing that a judge needs to always consider. But also, am I making a decision as regards this person that when the outcomes are looked at, I have made decisions such that I have made this person better? Can I do things as a judge? Can I make decisions as regards this individual in front of me that will have a positive impact on the society as a whole and on this individual? So what kinds of things can I do? It may be the only thing I can do is jail this person forever, because again, public safety, and that person may be the kind of individual who need to be in jail forever. That's a wise decision in some instances to make. But then there are other kinds of decisions. Can I shape sentences such that as a result of this sentence shape, that this individual will come out of it, and he'll come out of it in a positive fashion, so he can become a positive contributor to our society as a whole?
What should voters look for in the candidates running this fall for the criminal court bench? Kevin Kane is president of the Pelican Institute for Public Policy. The Louisiana think tank is trying to convince the legislature to change laws to give judges more discretion in sentencing.
If I were questioning the candidates, I would want to know, do you, as a judge, do you feel like you have enough flexibility? What would you do to both bring down the incarceration rate and improve public safety? Another question I would have is, are you aware of the fact that a lot of people don't want judges to have more discretion? And how do you respond to that? What do you say to the people in New Orleans who feel like judges in the past have let dangerous people out on the streets? What are you going to do to inspire confidence in the voters and in the public?
The Metropolitan Crime Commission has been issuing reports on the performance of criminal district court for more than a decade, comparing and rating the judges.
Are the judges putting in a full day's work? And a judge doesn't have to punch a time clock. So that's the beauty of the metrics that we apply to the court. Docket size, percentage of a docket over a year old, and the amount of time it takes for the typical case to move through the system. So the judges that have the best numbers there, I can't tell you what time they get to court, but I can tell you when they do get to court, they're working hard and they're working smart and they're good managers, and they've created a culture in their section of court in which all the parties, prosecution and defense, recognize that the judge is going to be fair and impartial, but there is going to be some finality to some of these cases.
Voters can read the MCC's reports online at metrocrime.org. Another group which evaluates the criminal court judges is Court Watch NOLA. Last year, 104 volunteers made more than 2,500 observations to check if judges are doing their jobs efficiently and transparently.
Well, like any job, showing up on time is incredibly important, but especially when you're a judge. Because if you're late, all of those public servants, the lawyers and the law enforcement officers who are being paid with taxpayer dollars, are sitting there doing nothing when they could be out on the streets or doing more work. All of those family members and victims who took time off from work or families are just sitting there waiting for things to happen instead of going back to their jobs and families. Voters can look at our website, courtwatchnola.org, and our elected officials pages to see when the different current judges in criminal district court take the bench and if they're being timely and professional.
University of New Orleans political scientist Edward Chervenak's surveys show only about 30% of New Orleanians approve of the job criminal court is doing. But still, the judge races are below the radar for many voters.
Most people tend to focus on the top of the ballot, and then what we see is roll-off, people rolling off as they move down the ballot. So it's not really on a lot of people's radar.
But if they do study the ballot, he says voters are thinking about crime.
That's the dominant issue for residents in Orleans Parish. So when they're voting for a judge, especially for the criminal courts, how is this judge dealing with the criminals?
It is difficult to overstate the importance of a judge, says Baptist Community Ministries Vice President of Public Safety and Governmental Oversight Grants, Lucia Ledoux.
So a voter who's better informed is going to be able to ask judges about the kinds of decisions that they make. They're going to ask them what factors into the decision. They're going to ask them, hopefully, very hard questions about, are they really ready to be held to account for upholding the law? One of the things that we don't ordinarily do is we don't ordinarily go out on a limb as lay citizens and challenge people who are getting elected to do a job. But the fact of the matter is, the more questions we ask, the less we take for granted that a person who's wearing a robe is a mysterious, all-knowing character instead of just another human being who's doing a piece of work that we gave them to do, the better off we are.
The next step for deciding your vote for criminal court judge is visiting wyes.org. We want you to check out our special candidate webpage where you can see and hear each candidate for criminal district court judge answer 5 questions about court governance. Log on to wyes.org and click on the Elections 2014 icon for Reshaping a Greater New Orleans Criminal Justice. Here's a preview. We asked the candidates what they think the courts can do on their own initiative to increase public trust through more accountability.
Your approach, why you're handling cases, your docket the way you happen to be handling it, why you've broken your docket down in any particular way, and engaging in a discussion with the public and with public interest groups will help ensure that they realize that we're taking the public's interest in the criminal district court seriously, and then they can also have an exchange with the courts so that the courts know what they have concerns with.
First thing, we got to hire somebody that can talk for us. We need a PR person. We currently do not have a PR person. The Code of Judicial Ethics keep us from talking to the press. When I first became a judge a long time ago, I was freer to talk to the members of the press. Today, you have fear of talking to the press because if you do, you wind up with a judicial complaint, and you got to hire a lawyer and go through that process.
In my court, I think, as in every other court, it should be published. The community needs to know what's going on. That's the problem. People were working down there, they don't know what we're doing, they don't know what's happening, they don't know how the laws are being, how things are being mishandled, how things are not being handled the correct way. And I think that there's an accountability to the public.
I think the standards that the Metropolitan Crime Commission uses are fair. I don't think that that's the end all, though. I think, again, the fair and impartial administration of justice is preeminent. I think that's the most important issue that a judge has to deal with. Certainly dockets are important, and timely dockets are important, and moving cases are.
What we have to do as a court is understand that we have our ability to adhere to our own internal governance. If anyone has a concern or question about judicial accountability, they deserve the right to ask us the question. Now, what we must do, we must answer the question. We must answer those legitimate questions to explain to them what our role is. We should be transparent.
Again, you can find our question and answer sessions with the Criminal District Court Judge candidates at wyes.org. And as candidates seek to make some changes at Tulane and Broad, the Louisiana legislature recently passed laws requiring that changes be made to some of the other courts in the Orleans criminal justice system. Two pieces of legislation passed in the spring 2014 session target New Orleans municipal and traffic courts and also juvenile court as part of an effort to right-size the courts and the number of judges who occupy the bench. The legislation, authored by New Orleans Representative Walt Leger, calls for the consolidation of administrative functions of municipal and traffic courts.
What the legislation calls for is that by 2017, the courts actually consolidate and begin to function as the traffic and municipal court. That the jurisdiction of those judges be consolidated and that each judge that serves have the capacity to handle both municipal and traffic violations, and that they are authorized en banc or altogether to be able to organize themselves to address the needs of the city and to handle the cases that come before them, which means they could assign 6 people to do municipal cases and 2 people to do traffic cases, or 4 and 4 or 5 and 3 or whatever they decide is necessary to accomplish their goal.
This legislative change comes on the heels of calls from the Orleans Inspector General to do away with traffic court altogether and reduce the number of judges, which total 8 combined at present. Supporters of this approach say that Orleans Traffic Court is the only one remaining nationwide, as Councilwoman Susan Guidry noted to Traffic Court Chief Judge Robert Jones during a recent Council Criminal Justice Committee hearing.
Actually, we have the last traffic court in the entire country that, due to consolidations for efficiency's purposes, every other traffic court in every other jurisdiction has been consolidated with another court.
Well, everybody said we're different, Ms. Guidry. So.
I just can't see a traffic court being different in one jurisdiction over another.
Leger's bill does not go as far as eliminating traffic court or reducing the number of judges, but it does call for more study.
It further establishes a task force or study commission that is made up of all of the judges who currently serve there, as well as members of the legislature, a representative of the mayor, and a representative of the city council, that are charged with issuing a report that shall be reported to the legislature before the 2015 session about how to accomplish this consolidation. The task force is also charged with considering the issues that have been presented in reports by both the OIG and others that suggest that we may not need 8 judges there, that we may need fewer.
Leger adds that he anticipates additional legislation regarding municipal and traffic court in future sessions. Meanwhile, the judges at New Orleans Juvenile Court are preparing to move to their new facility in Gentilly, while also adjusting to one less judgeship at the start of the year, when the section occupied by Judge Lawrence Lagarde will be eliminated after the judge's retirement, as per legislation approved this summer. Juvenile Judge Mark Doherty says the court can handle it.
Well, we hope that it will not impact the court negatively in terms of handling the public's business. It will mean dividing up the cases that are presently allotted to Judge Lagarde in Section D and distributing those cases to the other judges, and requiring, in order to meet legal timelines under the federal laws for child in need of care cases as well as state rules, that we step up to the plate and make sure all of those are complied with and hear the public's business.
The court's caseload has declined in the years since Katrina. Supporters of judgeship reduction point to reports from the Judicial Council of the state Supreme Court indicating that less judges could do the job. The recent legislation calls for the elimination of 2 judgeships from 6 to 4. In its 2013 report benchmarking the bench, the Bureau of Governmental Research notes that each section at juvenile court costs almost $500,000 annually, so a potential savings of $1 million could be realized each year, but used for a specific purpose only.
The law that reduced the number of judgeships for juvenile courts states specifically that all savings to the city must be put into juvenile services, so that the money can't be used to balance the budget or provide for any non-juvenile related services.
I don't want people to think of that as savings. That is an investment. Any money that we can invest in the future of our children, that we can reap as a peace dividend from smaller justice systems, should be reinvested in the positive development of our children.
Joshua Perry heads the Louisiana Center for Children's Rights, which serves as public defender for kids who go before the court. He says there are many ways to put the money to good use.
We don't have the mental health systems that our children deserve, and that needs an investment. We don't have the vocational training opportunities that our children deserve so that every one of them can have real economic opportunity, and that's a place for investment. We don't have the multiple pathways to an excellent education that we need to have to make sure that every child is educated in a way that they deserve. And that would be a great place for investment. We don't have the mentoring opportunities for kids in the city that I think all of us wish we had. So, there are a plethora of really good opportunities that we have here to make a real difference in the lives of New Orleans' children. And I really trust that the city is dedicated to doing that with this money that gets reinvested.
Meanwhile, the court has already been operating with one less judge, Yolanda King, who was suspended from the bench after her indictment for allegedly lying under oath about her residence when qualifying for a special election last year. Judge King continues to collect a salary and is on the ballot again. She faces several opponents. It's not certain when the elimination of the second section of juvenile court will take effect. However, the new facility has only 4 courtrooms. On the November 4th ballot, there is one juvenile court judge race. Incumbents up for the 1 municipal court and 2 traffic court seats on this year's ballot were reelected without opposition. Of the 14 constitutional amendments voters will consider in November, 1 affects judges across the state. Amendment number 5 asks voters to decide if they want to get rid of the requirement that judges retire at age 70. And there is a new information center that voters can turn to learn more about the New Orleans criminal justice system, and it's called Project Justice NOLA.
We are going to launch a new site, Project Justice NOLA, which we used in 2008 for the judicial elections to bring voters some unbiased information about the candidates then. But what we're doing differently now is we're going to perpetuate the site and we're going to bring voters information about the system. How does the system work? Who's in it? We're going to try and catalog and bring some order to some of the news stories that appear in the paper. And as with a lot of news stories, something happens in the system or that relates to the system. People read it one day, the next day it's gone. And frankly, we're human beings. We can't remember and focus on every detail. However, a site that sort of brings all those pieces together in one place is what we hope Project Justice NOLA will be. And it will enable people to go there and look at a whole variety of information about the system and how it works.
Project Justice NOLA will also feature the WYES Criminal Court Judge Question and Answer Forum. So you can log on to projectjusticenola.org as well as WYES.org to learn about the ideas the candidates have about how criminal district court can operate more efficiently and effectively. Thank you for watching Reshaping a Greater New Orleans Criminal Justice Elections 2014, and don't forget to vote. Reshaping a Greater New Orleans Criminal Justice is made possible by Baptist Community Ministries. Founded in 1924 as Southern Baptist Hospital, Baptist Community Ministries is committed to the development of a healthy community, offering a wholesome quality of life to its residents and to improving the physical, mental, and spiritual health of the individuals they serve. Baptist Community Ministries is a nonprofit private foundation registered in the state of Louisiana and is committed to the Greater New Orleans region. For more information, visit www.bcm.org.